Yeah, Gareth Morgan, Garethmorgan.
Great, and what's your position here?
I'm the Chief Constable of Staffordshire Police.
Thank you very much. So first of all, just tell me a little bit about the changes that you're making.
So we've taken a decision to invest in our neighbourhood teams, so we're transferring a number of resources currently in our response teams onto neighbourhoods. So there are about 70 officers going to neighbourhoods over the summer, and then a further up to 140 over the next 2 years. So that's about dealing with things quicker, earlier, solving problems, preventing crime. I think we're spending too much responding to events, and we should be spending more of our resource in preventing crime and working with partners and communities to do what I think they want us to do, which is to work with them to solve their problems.
And why are you introducing these changes?
Well, I think the public are very clear about what they want from policing, and I understand that and I recognise that, and I think we need to listen and respond to their concerns. But also it's about dealing with crime, so you deal with that, in my view, most effectively in local communities, working alongside them, listening to their concerns and dealing with them. So it is about reducing crime, it's about solving problems, it's about preventing crime, working with a range of communities and partners to do what I think we should be doing, which is preventing crime. We still have to respond to crime when it is an issue, in 999, an emergency, and we're still very able to do that. And we're also going to be investing resource in investigating crime. We're dealing with more serious crime, more complicated, protracted investigations that need more resources as well. So this is about looking at the resources that we've got and putting them in the right place.
Why are you focusing on neighbourhood policing as a priority here?
Well, because that's the way policing is structured. We work out of local communities. We are part of those communities. We're already there in significant numbers, but I actually think putting more resourcing there is how you stop the problems in the first place. You intervene early, you prevent crime, you get better intelligence, you work more effectively with people. I think that's a model of policing that the public expect and want. But it's also about me working with the public for them to understand. They need to trust me on this, is that an awful lot of what we do isn't visible. It doesn't happen in local communities. Cybercrime, the threats of terrorism, the serious crime issues that are prevalent in all police forces are clearly here in Staffordshire as well, and I need to be able to respond to that, and the public don't see that, and I wouldn't expect them to. But they need to understand I can't put all those resources into local communities. I have to balance where those resources are. But there's a recognition that there are things happening in local communities that need a policing response, and my job is to make sure those resources are in the right place.
Do you think it's about perception? Is it getting more bobbies on the beat out there that people can actually see people in action?
Yeah, I mean, I think people equate visibility and seeing police officers with us being effective. I'm not certain that's necessarily the case, but I'm not going to spend time arguing about it. I recognise what those concerns are, so I don't want my job is not to put people visible to make people feel better. It's about people working hard in communities to prevent crime, to respond to issues, and to listen to the concerns of communities and work alongside them to deal with them. That's what we're here to do. That's what police officers and police staff want to do. They want to work in those communities. So I hope it's a win-win. It's what the public want, but it's also about making better use of my resources. And I want to prevent crime. I want to see crime reducing in Staffordshire. And I think the way in which you do that is to respond effectively, is to be in neighbourhoods working more effectively at a local level.
And how are you paying for these additional officers?
Well, a lot of this is about redirecting existing resources, and we've got less police officers in Staffordshire than we've had before. There are 500 less than there were 10 years ago. So it's about redirecting a lot of resources. We have had an uplift this year because the Police and Crime Commissioner was able to increase the precepts, so our overall number of police officers is going up over the next 18 months by 50, which is very welcome, and they will be part and parcel of those changes that we will see over the coming year.
When you say you're 500 fewer than you were in 2010, you're getting 50 back almost. I mean, is that really going to help pick up the shortfall?
Well, it's an improvement on where we are, and it'd be churlish to say anything other. It's a very welcome uplift. But I think the public recognise that public services policing is not immune from it. I've got less resource. Now my job is to make the best use of the resources I've got. My job is to spend the public's money that they give me to be the Chief Constable the best way I can. That's why we're changing the way we deliver policing. If I had more resources, I would be able to do more, but I deal with what I've got. I've got the money and I've got the resources that are available to me. My job is to make the best use of them.
There's been a rise in violent crime and sexual offences nationwide. How is that reflected here in Staffordshire?
So we are seeing those same rises here. So violent crime has gone up here in line with the national trend. Interestingly, about 50% of those crimes are online offences, violent threats, communications on social media and a range of other issues. I'm not certain lots of the public would recognise those as violent crimes. I'm very clear they are offences that need to be investigated. They're unacceptable. There are victims of crime that are having crimes against them online. We need to do something about that. But it needs a different response to a violent crime from a pub fight or a violent crime in a domestic situation. Policing is therefore more complex than it used to be. But undoubtedly violent crime is up. Rape and serious sexual offences, threefold increase in 5 years. So there are about 3,000 offences of rape and serious sexual offences last year in Staffordshire. That's an incredible number compared to where we were. That's by and large an increase in reporting. I'd put that down to people being more confident to report. I think we should celebrate victims coming forward. It's an extraordinarily brave thing to do. My job is to have the resources available to respond to those, and that's the challenge, because they are complicated, protracted investigations. They need to be sensitively handled. They need good cops to deal with those investigations, and I need to find the resources to deal with them.
So the 3 response hubs, who will be based there and why?
So officers who deal 24/7 on duty every day of the year, dealing with 999 calls in essence, will be based in 3 hubs in Staffordshire covering the county. So and they're going to be out with technology. They're going to be out from the station. They're going to be patrolling their areas, responding to emergency calls. And those calls that aren't emergencies will get dealt with by officers on neighbourhoods, but also we can deal with things online. We can deal with things on the telephone. Not everything needs a physical police presence. Our job is to make sure we are kind of allocating the right resource at the right time.
And putting those officers into response hubs suggests they'll no longer be based at local police stations. Will we see local police stations closing down?
So those hubs are still police stations in areas, and local officers are working out of a range of different places. So some of them are still in police stations, but some of them are working in shared accommodation with local authority and the fire service, a range of other people. I think over the coming year we will be looking increasingly at sharing accommodation with a range of different partners. I don't need all the police buildings that are currently occupied in Staffordshire. They cost a lot of money to maintain. They're not necessarily in the right place. Those decisions have not been made yet. That's part of the ongoing work that we have to do. But I think the public would expect police officers to be out, to be available, to be responding to their needs, less concerned about which building they're in and where they come to work.
You mentioned sharing buildings there. In terms of the fire service, I know they now share their control room with West Midlands Fire Service, and down in West Mercia and Warwickshire we've seen a lot of I know you don't like the phrase back office staff, but back office operations, not frontline officers, shared resources there as well. Are we likely to see any such change in Staffordshire policing?
So there are changes in the arrangements for the fire service. That's the responsibility of the Police and Crime Commissioner. I think out of that there are options for us to look at things like accommodation. We already share some of our fleet, our kind of transport services we do here locally with the fire service. I think the public would expect us to look at every opportunity to make sure we're making the best use of the money to be as cost-effective, value for money as possible. So I don't think anything's off the table on that, and we would look at all of those issues. So to primarily keep our resources available to the public in terms of responding to policing.
And in terms of police staff as opposed to police officers, we've covered the increase in police officers. How will police staff numbers be affected?
So we are going through a review of all of our resourcing and all of our staffing at the moment to ensure that we've got the right people in the right places. And then part of that is a review of our police staff numbers. Now, you've talked about other opportunities for us to look at sharing some of those services, and that's part of the work we're going to be doing over the coming year.
What would you say is your biggest challenge at the moment in Staffordshire? We've talked about the rise in crime, in violent crime in particular, and you've also talked about having to make savings too. What would you say is the biggest challenge facing you?
So I think it is meeting the public's expectations and getting a shared understanding of what they want from policing and what I'm able to provide with all those challenges that we're confronted by, from international crime through to the most local of issues, in the context of less resource to respond. And that is the challenge that policing is confronted with, and that's my job. That's part of what these changes are addressing, and I don't think that's going to go away in the foreseeable future.
What is your big priority for the coming months?
I want to settle in the changes, and I want to respond. The biggest issue that my staff will tell me about when I sit down with them is they will say they're frustrated, they can't do the job as well as they want to. They feel stretched and pulled. My job is to give them the space to provide the service that the public need, and that's what I want to do.
Do you think the public will notice a change in the coming months as a result of the increase in officer numbers? Do you think people will notice a tangible difference?
Well, I hope so, because I want people to see more police officers visible, whether that's those who are responding or those in local neighbourhoods, and that is part of it. We want to hear from the public what they think about that, and understand that we're making the changes that are having an impact on their lives. That's got to be really important to us. We serve the public. It's our job is to make sure that we deliver the best possible service to them. So we want to hear from them in terms of it. A lot of the changes that we're doing, we've listened and reflected views from the public to get here. This is the public are saying they want more officers locally, and I'm saying we can do that, but you also need to understand the other things we need to do. This is a partnership. We police on behalf of the public, and I want them to be telling us what their views are on that, and us to be in a position to listen.
We've got new data protection regulations coming into force. How is that affecting policing and the data you can hold on people?
Well, we're very privileged in the access we have to people's personal data and private data. We're governed by a range of different rules and regulations. The latest changes are yet another set of changes, and we have to adapt to that. But we're primarily charged with looking after people's information for a policing purpose. That isn't effectively being changed by these new regulations. The public need to trust us in the information they give us, and we've got a big responsibility as guardians of that to make sure we look after it and deal with it properly.
We had reports earlier this week about different officers and the way they handle victims of crime who come forward, and checks on them done on the police national computer. Are you a force that does that as a matter of course?
So I think this is one of the concerns that's come about following the anxieties around disclosure matters in court and the information that we can use on people, and I think we have to get the balance right, that when somebody comes forward and reports a crime, to what extent do we then look at everything about them, and how much do we focus on the issues, and we're doing a lot of work in policing in general, but also here in Staffordshire, to make sure we get the right balance. It's got to be proportionate. We don't want to scare people from reporting crime because they think we're going to look at every aspect of their private life. But equally, there may well be things there in their data or on their technology that we need to have access to ensure that the evidence is presented to the court. That is a balance that we have to work on very hard.
And finally, Staffordshire is a huge county with very diverse communities. You've got inner city areas in Stoke, for example, and then you've got very rural, down in Kinver and Essington. How do you balance policing between those two different kinds of environments?
I think there's a recognition that different communities require different levels of policing. Everybody needs to be able to access an emergency service in an emergency. But you're right, different neighbourhoods, different communities need different levels of policing. They get resourced differently across the country. Staffordshire is no different to that. And that's why we need to be responsive to those needs, which brings me back to why I think policing is best delivered locally, because you understand the issues in your local community. I live in a rural part of Staffordshire. I work in parts of the inner city. I understand those differences, and I've worked in lots of police forces with very different backgrounds, and part of that is a recognition that you do need to respond to those issues in different communities in a way that reflects those communities and meets their expectations.
What message do you hope your communities take away from what you've announced and what we've been discussing here today?
I want the people of Staffordshire to continue to have confidence in policing in Staffordshire. They do. They have a lot of confidence in what we do. We want to do that better, more effectively. We are listening to their concerns. I want the public of Staffordshire to recognise that there are lots of demands placed on us, and we're working very hard to meet those different expectations placed on us.